France has gone, but its mindset remains. Traoré's test with the scholars. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Africa's youngest head of state, has been widely praised for his rhetoric and charisma since taking power in the September 2022 coup. His campaign against French influence in the Sahel makes headlines almost daily, and he has built a following that rivals the mystique once attached to Thomas Sankara. Millions of young Africans and Muslims, uneasy about France's lingering grip on the region, have rallied to him. But some of Traoré's recent moves are alienating the very people who cheered him loudest. Traoré and his comrades may well have pushed France out of the Sahel. What they have not shaken off is the Parisian mindset itself. Even as they fight one form of French influence, they are preserving the mindset of the French-trained elites and the secular administrative system. Has the struggle now turned against Muslim scholars, Arabic-educated Africans, and Islamic scholarly tradition? The recent crisis suggests it has. A scholar arrested. The crisis began with the arrest of Dr. Muhammad Ishaq Kindo, one of the country's most prominent imams, in late May. The Traoré government had drafted legislation restricting prayer spaces in public institutions. Kindo criticized it as an intrusion on religious freedom and worship. Days later, he was detained, his mosque in Ouagadougou was shut down, and nearly 100 of his supporters were rounded up and sent to a camp for what officials called civic and citizenship training. Kindo was not the leader of an armed group, nor did he command any force rivaling the state. By most accounts, he had been a supporter of Traoré's government. He was a scholar who objected to a law touching religious life, nothing more. Yet Traoré dismissed the backlash as the work of a small minority of extremists, and in a later address to religious scholars, warned that those preaching what he called extremist interpretations of Islam would face state action. If this is your Islam, we will fight it. Extremists must change. If they do not, the battle has begun. The students abroad. In the same speech, Traoré noted that roughly 1,000 Burkinabe students were studying in Arab countries, some 800 of them in Islamic law, although this should be understood as general Islamic studies. But then Traoré presented this as a security concern, since the students should rather study the technical fields the state supposedly needs, not Sharia. However, this claim deserves scrutiny. Students who go to Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, or Morocco to study are largely the product of a dual education system that is itself a colonial inheritance. One track in French-language secular schools, the other in Arabic-language schools, structurally cut off from it. Graduates of the Arabic track typically continue their education abroad because there's nowhere else to go, and returning home rarely opens doors. Not in the ministries, the judiciary, the army, the universities, or the major media houses, all of which remain the preserve of the French educated. Most end up as poorly paid imams, religious teachers, or interpreters, while nearly every rung of government, from clerk to minister, is held by graduates of the French system. Thus, singling out this already marginalized group as a security threat, rather than engaging them, sits uneasily with a leader who claims to speak for coexistence. It also raises the sincere question of whether any of the countries where these students studied ever export Sharia governance to Burkina Faso through them. There is no precedent for it. A student who cannot land even a minor administrative post and who holds only a religious credential is not positioned to impose a system of government on a state run by the army and a French-trained elite. The threat is manufactured. The real aim looks less like countering an actual Sharia project and more like discouraging any Arabic or Islamic education that operates outside state control. Echoes of Nasser. The rhetoric of enemies of the revolution indeed has a precedent. Gamal Abdel Nasser's Egypt provides the template of an anti-colonial military government that eventually swallowed independent political and religious life whole. Nasser spoke of independence, unity, and social justice. then brought the universities, the press, and religious institutions under state control, jailed his opponents, and treated any challenge to his rule as treason. Traoré hasn't replicated that model detail for detail, but the mechanism is familiar. A young officer with revolutionary legitimacy, an external enemy, and then a widening definition of enemy to include domestic critics, culminating in a closed state system justified by security threats. Such governments need a constant supply of enemies. France was the first. Enemies of the revolution followed. Now the target has shifted to Islamic circles outside state control, the Arabic-educated and the scholars. What independence would actually look like? Traoré casts himself as anti-colonial, yet the state he runs is still built on France's template. French remains the language of government, and the secular administrative order France installed is untouched. The French-educated can still enter the ministries, the universities, and the diplomatic corps. The Arabic-educated are kept at the margins. Secular, French-trained elites reach power without a second glance. A Muslim preacher is treated as a security risk. That is the contradiction at the center of this. French troops have left, but the cultural order they built has not. The slogans are of independence. The language of authority is still the colonizers. The Arabic-educated are accused of foreign loyalties, while no one questions the French-educated elite's evident loyalty to French law and French thought. The most durable form of colonialism isn't a foreign garrison. It's a state that keeps seeing itself through the colonizer's eyes long after the garrison is gone. From fighting France to courting Israel. Burkina Faso has also been warming to Israel. In June 2026, Traoré received the credentials of Israel's new non-resident ambassador, Simon Clément Seroussi, a step that followed a longer thaw in relations, and one that some of Traoré's own supporters shrugged off during the Gaza war as none of our business. None of this proves coordination between Ouagadougou and Tel Aviv, and it would be wrong to claim otherwise. But it would be equally wrong to treat the timing as pure coincidence. Israel has long viewed Africa as strategic ground for encircling the Arab and Islamic world from the south, and as a useful arena for security, intelligence, agricultural, and diplomatic ties. A weakening of the bonds between African Muslim societies and the wider Islamic world, the erosion of independent Islamic institutions, and the rise of elites who see Israel as a natural partner and Arab-Islamic identity as a threat to African identity. All of that happens to align with Israeli interests, whether or not anyone planned it that way. Conclusion. Africa does need to shed the vestiges of colonialism, but not by treating its own people's faith and history as suspect. More than 60% of Burkina Faso is Muslim, and much of that population has already been shut out by the French education system. Their history is bound up with centuries of Islamic scholarship in the Bilad al-Sudan. A revolution that ignores or vilifies that inheritance is building on sand. Real independence isn't measured by rhetoric or by which foreign flag a government waves. It's measured by who actually makes the decisions, which language runs the state, which groups can reach power, how independent the judiciary is, and whether a scholar can criticize a law without being arrested for it. It is Burkina Faso's Muslim majority, long overlooked despite its numbers, that has borne the brunt of resisting French influence. The country and its neighbors have paid dearly fighting a terrorism that, though carried out in Islam's name, has been fueled in no small part by outside interference. No doubt, Muslims worldwide back Burkina and its neighbors' fight. But branding scholars who object to specific policies as radicals will do nothing but push their followers toward the very alienation from the state that Traoré says he wants to prevent. If Traoré wants a country genuinely free of Western and Israeli influence and genuinely rid of terrorism, the way there runs through the scholars, not around them. he has a chance to be the first leader in the region to treat the Arabic educated as part of the state rather than a threat to it.